Hey guys, today I wanted to make a video covering my branded Bystial deck profile I've been playing for this format. It's really fun. It isn't quite as strong as branded Despia, but it's a lot more flexible with the boards it can make, and it can play around quite a few cards that regular branded Despia can't. And I apologize for the quality. I'm recording this off my phone. My webcam doesn't have high enough quality, but with that, I'll start getting into the profile. So first up, we have 3 Quim, 3 Albaz, and 2 Cartesia. Typically, you want to see one of these cards in your hand alongside a Bystial. That'll get you where you need to go with your combo. It's obviously best to start with Quim, because she can pitch one of these two. But it's okay to open up one of these other guys. Albaz can be linked off or help with getting Cartesia out, or a great pitch off of Branded and High Spirits. But any of these is good to open up with. Next up, with our Bystial lineup, we have quite a large Bystial package. We're running 3 Lubellion, a Magnamut, of course, a Baldric, 3 Saronir, 2 Druisworm, and a Bystial Aliber. Bystial Aliber is really good if you can't find access to Albaz. He counts in the graveyard as Albaz, and then he's also searchable off of Lubellion, and you can dump him with Saronir if you have access to all the Bystials you need already, which is really good. We're only playing 2 Druisworm because we'd much prefer to see the other Bystials, but he's not bad to see either, as long as you're paired up with another card. These are more utility. And then Baldric, of course, for the name. The more Bystials you can activate from your hand, the better. So if you already have access to Saronir, Druisworm, and you've gone through your Magnamut, you still have Baldric you can search, which can extend further, or just be used as a hand trap if you're going second. Next up, we have our 1-up branded monsters. We have Shrouded Dragon, or as I like to call him, Upstart Dragon, so people know it, can tell which Albion it is. We have Mercurier, and we have Kit. Shrouded Dragon is great. He could be bumped up to 3 if you really want to. I'm running another engine right now in my deck, so I keep him at 1. All of these are great to open up with, to start with, especially Shrouded Dragon, because it can put Albaz in the grave if you want to pitch something else with Quim, like Mercurier, which I do a lot of the times if I have another Bystial, because typically you want to banish this with the Bystial, so you can get another search for a branded monster that you may need. And Kit is great in this deck, better than Aliber would be, because typically you want to use your normal summon on Quim, and Kit can special herself out. She can also be reborn off of Quim, which is more than you can do with Aliber. And you can typically, I'm not going for Kit, but in a pinch, if I get interrupted a few times, it's really nice to be able to summon her. So now we're going to start with the spells, and we're going to start with the branded fusion of the deck. We have 3 High Spirits. This card is incredible. It gets you access to any of your branded monsters you need. Most of the time you're going to be getting Quim if you don't already have her. And then if you have Quim, you'll normal her, use her effect, and then use branded and High Spirits if you can, because it'll get Quim to reborn whatever you pitch to the grave, and get you your extra deck monster in the grave for your search in the end phase. It's basically a +3 and it's very strong. To round up the branded cards, we have our 1-of branded spells and trap. 1 branded regain. This can be bumped up to 2. It's really good at keeping cards in your hand, keeping bodies on the board, and also its effect to summon is not once per turn. So if you have 2 of these on the board, you can summon 2 Bystials from your grave. Next we have our main fusion spell, branded in white. Most of the deck's goal is to be loading up the graveyard with monsters that you can use on your opponent's turn or in the end phase to get more advantage. And this is basically always live. If you have an Albaz in your grave, which is really important, but also banishing the cards can turn on Disbatter to summon whatever you banished off of branded in white, so it's just very strong overall. Also, it doesn't fusion lock you, which is good to note. Next we have probably the most cuttable card of all of these, branded in red. It really depends on your extra deck, if you're running Guardian Chimera or not. If you're not, it's probably not worth running this card. You could run something else, and most of the time you're going to be setting the next card with Albion in the end phase, Branded Retribution. Branded Retribution, typically always better to set than to dump to the grave. You're almost always going to be having 2 of the fusion monsters in your graveyard to return back, and then on the next turn you can banish it to return one of these and try to get the most value out of this card as you can. And finally we have Plan B branded fusion. 1 branded fusion. It comes up, it's really searchable. You can search it off of dumping this, adding this back. You can use Kit to add it to your hand, but a lot of the times you aren't going to be wanting to use branded fusion because it'll lock you out of half of your extra deck. I am considering bumping this up to 3, putting 2 in the side deck because it's great going second, but you know, if it does get ashed, you're still locked into fusions, so you can't access half your extra deck. Still, branded fusion, still a very strong card. I still love it. To round out our 1-of spells, we have 1 Burial, just not as good in this deck as it is in Despia, because in Despia it's a 1-card starter, but in this deck it's really good if your Quim gets interrupted and you need a card in the grave to banish off of a Bystial. It's really nice and it comes up quite frequently. And the Called By. Also potentially cuttable. You don't lose to Ash near as hard. A lot of the times people are going to be holding the Ash for the branded fusion because they think you're on Despia, but you'll go through your whole combo and no Ash, and they feel like they've wasted it. So sometimes I'll hold this in my hand during the end phase in case they try to Ash Titaniclad or Albion. You can hold this in your hand, chain in the end phase, because if you set it, you have to wait until the next turn to be able to use it. So it's still good, it's still Called By, but it is cuttable potentially. And now we have the sauce. We have the Nadir Servant package. So after testing this engine, I would not run this in this build anymore. This pairs up greatly with Regained because you can pitch the Garura from your extra deck to the grave, draw a card off that, and if you have Regained on the board, use Maximus to banish the Garura, trigger Regained, draw another card, and then Maximus will send 2, so this is like a +5 if you have Regained on the board. It is insane. Another thing that's really important with this too is the best time to nib you is when you've summoned Lubellion by pitching or by tributing the Disbotter, and they don't want you to get regained on the board. But most of the time you will have a Lubellion and a Cartesia on the board, so if they activate Nibiru, you can chain Cartesia, summon Granguino, everything will get sent to the grave, but Granguino will trigger, and you can summon Maximus from the deck. And Maximus can help extend your plays by sending the fusions later for the end phase. So you can still have something on the board. Lastly, in the main deck, I'm running 6 hand traps. I'm running 3 Imperm and 3 Ash Blossom. These are the most effective hand traps I've found for my locals. You can basically put whatever you need. It is worth noting that with Veiler and Droll, if you run those in the main deck, you can pitch it off of High Spirits to be able to get your plays going if you want. The reason I'm running hand traps over board breakers is because paired up with 7 Bystials, you're more than likely to find a hand trap and a Bystial, or just 2 hand traps that you can activate. Also, if I'm going second, I can side out my Nadir package for more hand traps. But if you want to play board breakers, it's probably just as good. So next I'll move to the extra deck. We'll start with Synchros. We have the main boss monster, Disbotter. Very strong, especially paired up with Regained. Makes them constantly come back to the board, and usually turn 1 I'll link them off. The second they summon out a monster, trigger Regained, summon this guy back, and you have the link monster plus Disbatter at this point. Pop is always live, integral to your combo, because typically you'll banish a tuner from the grave, summon it back with this, get another synchro, get another fusion, whatever you need. Next up, Chaos Angel. Rest in peace, Baron. This is kind of my flex spot right now. I chose Chaos Angel because typically you don't make Baron turn 1 because you want the fusions and recursion in the grave, but if you had all that, you could go into Baron. But I use Baron mostly on turn 3 because typically you'll summon out Bystial somehow, and you'll typically have a tuner left over when it comes back to you, so you can just clear off the board, and it's really hard to out this card for some decks because you'll have the light and dark. Lastly, for Synchros, Lulu Willith. That's why I don't really like calling this deck Synchro. Only got 3. But anyways, Lulu, really good summoning with Granguino. It hits the grave, can summon a tuner. Less cuttable in this deck than it is in Despia. Next up, we got Mirror Jade. You do a lot of Albaz effects, and you typically want to save that Albaz effect for Mirror Jade. Whereas your main fusion on your first turn is going to be Albion and Granguino. We do not run Puppet Lock as you see in the main deck, but you can put it in the side deck. It is still an option, but this card is fantastic even without Puppet Lock, because it just adds on to your endless recursion already. It's just really good for that. Next up, we have what I like to call the Mirror Jade ammo. We've got 2 Albions, a Renbrum, and a Titaniclad. You'll notice I don't have Rebellion in the extra deck because he locks you into fusions the same way that Branded Fusion does, and you typically want to fuse for Mirror Jade and not for Lubellion. Also, something important to note is at the end of your combo, your Mirror Jade ammo will be down to this. So it's really important to set Branded and Retribution with this card so that you can return these two. That's why I feel like Branded and Red is probably the most cuttable. But that finishes it for the Albaz fusions. Next up, we got Granguinol. Only one. You can recur it with regained as well. It would be nice to have two, but the extra deck is just way too tight. Typically, you want to pair this up with your Branded High Spirits so that you can send both of these. These are really good to have so that your Retribution is live. It's kind of important to note you typically want to send Titaniclad before you send Albion. That way you're not stuck on just Retribution without two targets. You'll have to wait until your Mirror Jade comes online, or something else. If you want to send back your Mirror Jade to bring out Albaz to fuse with the Mirror Jade, you can do that as well with Retribution. But typically you want to set the Retribution to shuffle back these guys. Last up for the fusions, we got Aurora and Guardian Chimera. Guardian Chimera, kind of like the Apo of the deck, can turn your raw advantage into one big dude, get some more cards to draw, pop a card. Can be swapped out with Borreload, but I find I end on a lot of spellcasters. Garura, Nadir, pitch this, draw a card, pair it up with Regained, draw two cards, really strong. Also does come up with Branded and White. If you banish Albaz and another Bystial, you get a level 6 Dark, potentially for your Chaos Angel, or just good link material for a draw. Lastly, the 3 link monsters. We got Striker Dragon, we have Erratic Seals, and we have Little Knight. Important to note with Little Knight, since it's usually the last extra deck monster you'll summon, if you haven't triggered Regained yet, you can use its effect. If you link summon it with an extra deck monster, banish something, recycle with Regained, draw another card. Striker Dragon, I've tried cutting, but it's just too good at turning bad hands into good hands. You can have something like Albaz, Branded and Red, and just 3 hand traps. You can normal Albaz, link it for Striker Dragon, Branded Red, summon out Mirror Jade, then you have Mirror Jade and 3 hand traps, which is nice. It can also be used as link material for your boss monster, Erratic Seals. Erratic Seals is insanely strong. It can be up to 3 interruptions potentially. You can, ideas to wait for them to summon an extra deck monster. Then you trigger Seals, summon out an Albaz, use Albaz effects, fuse with the extra deck monster, and you get a Mirror Jade banish on top of that. As well as if you can loop the Mirror Jade even further than that. So Erratic Seals, very strong. Little Knight, of course, very strong. And that kind of makes Striker Dragon uncuttable. So I want to thank you guys for getting this far into the video. I'm not going to really show off my side deck for 2 reasons. I don't think you should copy just somebody else's side deck. I think you should tailor your side deck to your event. Secondly, I don't think my side deck is all that great right now. Could definitely use some improvements, but I want to show off a few different techs I've been thinking about. Firstly, this is in my side deck right now, but Gimmick Puppet, there's still a 2-card puppet combo with Quim and Lubellion. I can show you guys later if you're really interested. Secondly, we got Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. Burn card, I think it's better than Masquerain. because if time gets called, this can still burn, as opposed to having to hope your opponent does something. Lastly, we have Alba Lenatus. Tenpai is really good right now, and this card paired up with Seals is very strong because you can bounce the field spell and then summon Albaz, and Albaz can fuse away all three of these guys. So this makes it to where they're not unaffected anymore, and then you get to just clear their board, and then they will basically have to pass after that. But yeah, that's it for this. If you guys want to see more, let me know, and I'll see you guys later.